Monty once again from DPL Surveillance Equipment. Just finished wiping down my car. Watching the working people go back and forth, going to work. They're rushing off like horses, breaking out of the gate, getting on the freeways and highways and whatever else they do. It's interesting when you get caught up in the fiat system. And if you're in really deep, you just automatically your car automatically just goes to work, and then you sit there and you do whatever you do in a cubicle or something. Then you automatically jump into your car and it automatically goes back home, and everything is just automated, so to speak. You might as well be a robot. So anyway, be careful of getting caught up in the mechanism that defines, according to what title somebody gives you, according to what plaque they put on your desk, according to where they situate you in an office building or something. I think it's insulting to most of our intelligence to be caught up in such a protocol. Now, one protocol that I do like, me and my wife, and even our cat Lazy Bones, we don't do much throughout the day or the week, except we go to the gym, we come back home, relax and take it easy. And I run a small business, but since Washington and the corporate types have screwed up the economic environment so much, we don't depend upon the business as much as we used to, but it's there. And but most of the money, excuse the noise, most of the money that we use, most of our wealth is in cryptocurrencies, and that gives us a certain amount of financial independence, a definite financial sovereignty. So anyway, having said all that, my name is Monty Henry, owner of DPL Surveillance Equipment, and I run a full-service surveillance and security equipment company, and we do have lifetime guarantees and warranties on all the products. We have 24/7, 365 tech sales and customer support, by the way, and a very large and growing articles directory, podcast directory, video demonstration library, blogs that number into the hundreds. You could learn about health and fitness, according to what I've been writing about and blogging about and making videos on. Learn about health and fitness, learn about cybersecurity, learn about economics and finance, learn about cryptocurrencies, what is cybersecurity, a number of things, just all kind of crazy topics. Talked about just one of the articles, for instance, covers CRISPR, a gene editing technology. You name it, every single thing imaginable. We do accept Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin on the website, by the way. And if you've made a good amount of money, like some of us have, in Bitcoin, with the Bitcoin and Litecoin and Ethereums, feel free to use them on our website and the shopping cart. We don't have to worry about stupid merchant discount fees and batch fees, settlement fees, service fees, all these things. We're basically giving the middle finger to MasterCard and Visa and American Express and Discover. All of those guys, they're going to be extinct sooner as compared to later, because we're going to keep promoting and keep using and keep sharing information about Bitcoin and its advantages to wean us off of this dinosaur and antiquated system, which basically hits upon the article that we're going to talk about today, the podcast, because there's a lot of correlation between the freedoms that Bitcoin and blockchain have to offer as compared to the limitations and the restrictions and the conundrum of confusion and chaos associated with the fiat system, the banking system, the traditional credit card and merchant processor system, all that is just plain garbage and old and antiquated, and it does more harm than good. Last thing is, the website is completely redesigned. I have to mention that. Hats off to the designer. Very optimized for mobile, very easy to navigate and find information on. State-of-the-art lifetime guaranteed spy gadgets is what we have, in addition to a ton of free information. Now let's see. Let's get into the article today. What are we talking about? Oh yeah, I made a segue sort of. I gave you a teaser rather, in terms of what we're going to be talking about, because there's a lot of confusion and a lot of limitations basically associated with the fiat-based system. The IMF and the World Bank and the BIS, or the Bank of International Settlements, and all of these institutions, including the regular financial system, Federal Reserves and the central bankers, these guys create this hodgepodge of confusion, old, antiquated, a total mess of a finance industry and economics based upon the idea that you guys are nothing but consumers, and you're supposed to spend your money as quickly as you get it because they know it's worthless and you know it's worthless, but nobody really wants to acknowledge it, right? So anyway, as soon as you make a dime, you have to spend it. But the Austrian School of Economics is a little bit different. A lot of Bitcoiners they are firm believers in the Austrian School of Economics, whereby you save and you invest and you actually have wealth accumulated, so you don't have to worry about the vagaries of what the fiat-based system has to offer. Now, this let me just shape this podcast a little bit, put it in proper context. There's something called the Marshall Islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean somewhere, a chain of islands. They've been cut off from the traditional banking system because it's unprofitable. Banks don't when banks go into a community, they have to consider whether or not they are going to be able to make money from you. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and blockchain, we don't care whether or not you're profitable or not. What we care about is whether or not you actually want to participate. And if you want to participate, you just buy some Bitcoin, buy some Ethereum, buy some Litecoin, buy some whichever which one you want. A very minuscule amount or a very large amount. That's how you get in. That's your ticket to entry. Just buy some cryptos and start sending it, start receiving it, doing whatever you need to do. That's the only criteria. Let's figure out how this all fits into what's happening with the Marshall Islands. The name of the article is called Marshall Islands to Adapt Cryptocurrencies Despite IMF Warning. The International Monetary Fund has advised against the Republic of the Marshall Islands' plan to introduce a digital currency as a second legal tender alongside the dollar. The Marshall Islands, a remote chain of islands in the Central Pacific, passed a law on the issue in February, aiming for the planned sovereign cryptocurrency to boost the local economy and counter the increasing risk of the nation becoming disconnected from the global financial system. However, following a period of consultation with officials from the islands, the IMF published a paper on Monday advising against the move. According to the paper, the Marshall Islands economy is now highly dependent on external aid as the country faces constant climate change and natural disasters. So basically, the Marshall Islands, because they're going to get cut off from the banking system, they were going to look at cryptocurrencies, and then the IMF, who doesn't want to help them at all, says, we don't think that's a good idea. So in other words, you're supposed to starve to death, you and your family and your business or whatever, while the traditional banks cut you off from the system. I don't know if that makes any sense, you guys. Let's keep going. However, following a period of consultation with the IMF, okay, we've covered that, the only domestic commercial bank in the country is now at risk of losing its last U.S. dollar correspondent banking relationship, or CBR, with a U.S.-based bank due to tightened due diligence across financial institutions in the United States. The IMF argued that the introduction of a cryptocurrency as legal tender may backfire if a lack of comprehensive anti-money laundering measures eventually leads to the U.S. bank cutting ties with the country. Now, this is kind of ironic because, in the one sense, they're saying that they don't want to have anything to do with the Marshall Islands, these banks, because it's not profitable. And on the other hand, because again they are so small of an island, and the banks in the country are so small, they have a hard time complying with rigorous compliance laws. So it's like a catch-22. If you're so small, you can't pay for a lot of employees and pay a lot of money for compliance. And at the same time, they're telling you, because you are small, we don't want to have anything to do with you because we don't make enough money from you. I don't know if that's really helping out the cause, okay, as far as what banks and what financial institutions really should be doing. Again, with Bitcoin and blockchain, all of this goes out the window. We don't care how large you are, how small you are, whether or not you're compliant or not. You put your Bitcoin on the blockchain. It's recorded there indefinitely. When you want to get it off and spend it, you just log in with your private keys and you get access to your money. It's that simple. Let's keep going here. The IMF continued, in the absence of adequate risk mitigating measures, the issuance of a decentralized digital currency as a second legal tender would not only increase macroeconomic and financial integrity risk, but elevate the risk of losing the last U.S. dollar CBR. Should that happen, external aid and other flows could be disrupted, which would result in a significant drag on the economy, it argued. Now, this is almost like a threat from the IMF stating that if you try to take matters into your own hands, Marshall Islands, if you try to take matters into your own hands, we're going to label you as like a black sheep, a pariah or something, and cut you off completely. But on the other hand, you don't really have a choice because you know, if the banks abandon your island, then what choice do you have except to do something? And this cryptocurrency alternative seems to be an alternative. Okay, while the IMF is specifically advising in this case on the social and monetary systems in the Marshall Islands, it perhaps offers a window into the thinking of the Global Monetary Organization on whether cryptocurrencies should be elevated to the status of legal tender in the traditional financial system. The paper also follows recent remarks made by IMF officials who argue that the rapid growth of crypto assets poses a threat to the demand for fiat currencies. I think that statement says it all. The growth of crypto assets poses a threat to the demand for fiat currencies. In other words, once you start to realize the advantages and the benefit of crypto assets, then of course you're not going to want to have anything to do with the dollars. That's the way it's supposed to work. When you have competition in any avenue, you put more emphasis on the one with the most advantages and less emphasis on the one that doesn't offer you as much in the way of advantages anymore, okay? As such, they argued that central banks should raise their game, adopting desirable features of cryptocurrencies to better compete with the nascent technology, a move described as fight fire with fire by the IMF chief Christine Lagarde. This is the most stupid part of the statements that I can think of. Okay, this is the most insane part here. Central banks should adopt the most desirable features of cryptocurrencies. The most desirable feature, you guys, of Bitcoin is the decentralized nature, the peer-to-peer, borderless, censorship resistance, a highly secure, highly immutable blockchain associated with Bitcoin. You're not going to duplicate those features if you are the IMF. You don't want decentralization. You don't want censorship resistance. the governments, by definition, have to censor, they have to control, they have to monitor, they have to surveil. With the blockchain, we don't need, we don't want, and we don't desire to have to censor at all. Nobody cares who you are. Nobody cares about what religion, ethnicity, or whether or not you're wealthy or poor, where you're located geographically. All these things again go out of the window. So this is a very stupid statement that Christine Lagarde is making as far as adopting desirable features of cryptocurrencies. Unbanked. What happens when a country is financially cut off? Cash is king in the Marshall Islands as complex banking rules scare away foreign partner bank. What happens to a country if it loses access to the world's money? On the Marshall Islands, a chain of volcanic islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, population 53,066, the only homegrown bank can't issue credit cards, doesn't have any ATMs, and sends well-worn dollar bills between its island branches by boat. But it had been able to let islanders send and receive money from abroad through a link with Honolulu-based First Hawaiian Bank. Now it is in danger of losing that crucial financial tie to the outside world as First Hawaiian, a unit of France's PNB Paribas, prepares to close down all business with the Bank of the Marshall Islands. Without an international banking relationship, the bank gets cut off from a number of services, not just from handling international money transfers, but also cashing paychecks for one of the island's largest employers, the U.S. military base. The closure is a side effect of stricter banking rules to prevent money laundering and terrorism financing. Banks are especially weary of exposure to small Pacific islands, Pacific nations that struggle to meet complex regulatory demands. International banks have also pulled out of Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga, and the use of cash across the Oceania region is rising, according to the International Monetary Fund. So again, Marshall Islands is not alone. You have Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga, and people are complaining about the potential for money laundering, but actually you promote it when you sever your banking relationships, and because of the way fiat works, it's always going to be the ideal mechanism for money laundering. So somebody's got their head up their ass and they're not thinking clearly about what they're saying. Banks make at best scant profits from tiny markets like the Marshall Islands, the world's fourth smallest economy, spread over an area roughly the size of Indonesia and vulnerable to rising sea levels. The country uses the dollar as its currency and is highly reliant on U.S. assistance. First Hawaiian, which doesn't have any branches on the Marshall Islands but has acted as an intermediary for the country's bank, hasn't found evidence of illegal financing activity, but now views the business risk of its long-distance relationship as too high, according to the people briefed on the matter. PNB officials have declined to comment on the bank's decision and when exactly the exit will occur. The process of moving money into the country is already circuitous. When Albius Latier wants to send money from Springdale, Arkansas, home to Tyson Foods and a contingent of Marshallese to his brother in Ibe, the country's second most populous area. Ibe is spelled E-B-E-Y-E, E-B-E-Y-E. The country's second most populous area. He first has to wire it via Western Union to relatives in Majuro, the capital. Then they transferred via the domestic bank to his brother in Ibe. Ibe's only venue for international transfers has been a MoneyGram branch tied to the domestic bank. During tax season, there can be a line of 100 people outside, says Ramanti Chongam, a 34-year-old high school math teacher on Ibe. The MoneyGram already restricts the number of transactions from each customer. With First Hawaiian's exit, that channel will be cut off altogether. People think you just put money in and it comes out the other side, said Brad Wynn Bigler, Western Union Senior Vice President and Treasurer. Most banks are still very national or tied to a specific region, so most banks need to deal with another bank to move money. Now, this shows how primitive and obsolete and antiquated that the banking system is. It says here, people think you just put money in and it comes out the other side. Well, believe it or not, with Bitcoin and blockchain, that's exactly what happens. If I go out and buy a Bitcoin or a fraction of a Bitcoin right now, it's logged indefinitely on the blockchain, a public ledger. That money is mine, and I'm the only one that can claim it as long as I have my private keys. Whenever I want to get it off of there, I log in with my private keys, and that money is mine, and I can get it and spend it, a fraction of it or all of it. It doesn't matter, again, where I am or anything else. So Western Union is sounding like the idiot corporation that they are by talking about, people think that you just put money in, it comes out the other side. You need to take a look at why we're doing that every day or how we're doing that every day with Bitcoin and blockchain. Most banks are still very national, tied to a specific region. See, that part is also very revealing. Bitcoin and blockchain aren't tied to any region. It's worldwide and international in scope by default. As long as you can get access to the internet, satellites, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, RF, some wireless or wired protocol, it doesn't matter. You can do your interactions, okay? And if you can't get access to those technologies, don't bother or don't worry, because as long as you have, again, your private keys and your Trezor hardware wallet or your Ledger Nano hardware wallet, you can get your money whenever you need to, okay? People think, okay, let me see. Unlike MoneyGram, Western Union can continue to operate in the Marshall Islands as it bypasses the nation's financial system by working through the Bank of Guam, which has one branch in Majuro. But for anyone, I buy receiving money through Western Union means either using a middleman or taking a flight or a long boat ride 275 miles to the capital. Workarounds abound. Marshallese, lucky enough to have debit cards issued by a foreign bank, can ask friends who work on the U.S. military base on Kwajalein Atoll, where there is a bank operated by Bank of America. Only American military personnel can open accounts there, by the way, to withdraw money for them. Cardholders give their cards and PIN numbers to friends who work on the base. Those without cards make deals with those who do. Favors often involve a tip for the helper. And this is also ridiculous in terms of all the loops and hurdles and obstacle courses you got to go through working with typical fiat and the traditional banking networks, as you can tell, you guys. We give them a little extra on the side for their assistance, says Ms. Chong Gum. In the absence of credit cards, mom and pop stores keep a log of transactions on credit until paychecks arrive, issuing cash for any remaining balance. Many Marshallese stock up on food before leaving the country, as United Airlines, the one carrier that flies out of Majuro to the United States, no longer accepts cash on board. I've known some families who traveled there and they couldn't eat on the flight back, says Lakutshirts Hosia, a photographer in Majuro. None of this will get easier if First Hawaiian withdraws. The IMF and other agencies are now trying to help the Bank of Marshall Islands get in compliance with the new rules. For a little country like this, and for the small banking community there, this has been overwhelming, said Andrew Spindler, president of the Financial Services Volunteer Corporations Corps, a New York-based nonprofit that has been working with Marshall Island officials. The tide has been rising over the last 10 to 15 years about what banks expect from each other, said Adam Shubin, who has led efforts to combat terror financing and money laundering at the United States Treasury Department, and that has excluded some peripheral bank systems that just haven't caught up. Officials agree that the financial isolation and the trend toward cash come with their own risk. I just want to make a note of the fact that this Adam Zubin, he brags about excluding peripheral banking systems that just haven't caught up. Well, he wouldn't be able to exclude anybody in the Bitcoin crypto space because you don't have that authority. So you guys keep that in mind. You don't have to worry about some idiot from the Treasury Department or anywhere else or anyone else excluding you from doing your banking with Bitcoin and blockchain. And an inability to make international payments means it's harder for businesses to settle trade deals and potentially divert funds into shadow banking channels, according to the Financial Stability Board, an international body that monitors the global financial system. In addition, access to outside capital is crucial to fighting poverty in the emerging world, said Robert Marshbacher Jr., former president of the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, a U.S. government agency that helps American businesses invest in emerging markets. In a desperate measure, earlier this year, the Marshall Islands announced it would launch a cryptocurrency, a move financial experts says won't solve its banking woes. Well, I don't know if these financial experts, I don't know if what they're saying makes any difference. If you want to issue your own cryptocurrency, go right ahead. This is being done, again, you guys, out of desperation. See, these countries are going to issue their own cryptocurrencies because they are being cut off and sanctioned and penalized and all of that. So at some point, you don't have a choice. And you're going to experiment with your own country-based cryptocurrencies. Excuse the noise. You're going to issue your own country-based cryptocurrencies, and then at some point, you're going to find out about Bitcoin, or your citizens are going to find out about Bitcoin, and then they're going to dump your country-based cryptocurrencies, and then they're going to realize and understand and benefit from the advantages of Bitcoin. So this is like a gateway drug, if you will, into the world of Bitcoin by issuing your own country-based cryptocurrency out of desperation, and again, eventually your citizens and even yourselves, who people who manage these emerging markets and countries and such, you're going to learn the difference also eventually. Carolina Claver, senior financial sector expert at the IMF, said at the fund's annual meeting that it's difficult to blame banks for leaving minuscule markets. It's a business decision, she said. But on the other hand, you cannot exclude completely a country because it's small. Everybody's using cash, and that's bad for anti-money laundering, said Sultan Korean, banking commissioner for the Marshall Islands. Well, that's about it, you guys, for this particular article. This is the most insane thing imaginable when you have clear-cut cases where countries and islands and various jurisdictions are cut off from traditional banking, but they're warned about looking at alternatives, even if it's done out of desperation. I guess you're supposed to just starve to death. I guess your business is supposed to close down and everything is supposed to shut down completely, while the stupid people at the IMF and the OPEC and all of these other organizations try and figure out whether or not they have an obligation to serve small communities as well as large communities that may not be profitable. If you guys have to deal with, if the banking institutions, if they only want to deal with customers and islands and nations that have a whole lot of money that are profitable for them, then I don't know if they need the charter, that banking charter, as much as they say they need it. Because believe it or not all neighborhoods are going to be such that you're going to make a lot of money. Not all islands are filled with rich and wealthy people. Not all nations are going to be such that you're going to be, making a ton of money off of them anytime soon. In some cases, and a lot of times you have to grow small businesses, grow small communities, grow small neighborhoods, grow island nations into larger nations. But again, this is what happens in the fiat world. They can pick and choose, they can discriminate, they can harass and intimidate, but they can't stop Bitcoin. So make sure you understand Bitcoin is ultimately where you want to be, combined with blockchain. You don't have to worry about censorship. You don't have to worry about someone cutting you off and all of this other stuff. Anyway, we're going to close out this session. As I like to say at the conclusion of every session, you guys, stay safe out there and keep your eyes and ears open. And keep talking Bitcoin. Bye.